Nothing.
Yeah, no, nothing. Sorry.
Nothing.
Okay, so that's the first hint. Okay, so if you're going to something, always do. So I've done some research on quite a number of you, just to get a little bit of background, just to see who you are and what we've got in common, etc. So that's my first networking hint at the beginning of it. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I was a CIO for about 20-30 years with a number of different companies. So I always joke it was toys, drugs, drink, power, more drink, money. But more realistically, that was Eon, Tonka Toys, Scottish Newcastle, Domino's Pizza, which everybody remembers, but most latterly BNP Paribas. And we all know, if you're a CIO, it's 24/7, 365, particularly if you're in the retail industry and banking. We were in retail banking. So I'm now a non-executive director for Building Society, which I love, and that's a part-time role. And then I spend the rest of my time doing a lot of pro bono work, encouraging children to get into coding. We run a national coding competition, doing mentoring. And then this was something when Kevin approached me, I thought, oh, this is great. So some other way I can willingly give my time. I'm very fortunate to be able to have retired relatively early. But the problem you'll find is that your brain just gets, you don't want your brain to get to mush. So that's what I'm doing. So on to networking. We're going to cover 4 key points. What is networking? Just to clarify that, why it's important, then try and give you some hints and tips, and hopefully you'll share your hints and tips as well on increasing your networking skills. Then a little bit of focus on keeping the network alive. I have said here Chatham House rules, but as we're recording, I'll obviously be pretty careful on what I say. But I would just say these are my views, they're general pointers, and please feel free to interrupt me, because if you don't, I'll probably think you've gone to sleep or something. So and feel free to make mutterings at times so that I know you're there. Everybody okay so far?
Yep. Lovely.
Good, great, thank you. Good, great. So networking, often confused with selling. And we're not necessarily very good at it because we think it is selling when we see people, oh, we think you're talking to me for a reason. But it isn't. It's all about meeting, getting to know people for varying reasons who you can help. One of the things we often forget in this is it's all about who may be able to help you, but it's also who can who might be able to, who you might be able to help in different ways. And that, of course, makes us all feel really good when we can help people. It is about long-term relationships, networking. It's not about coming and going, short-term acquaintances during different times. We've all got lots of people who've passed through our lives, and then they come up again on LinkedIn. You're thinking, crumbs, I have no idea. Not even the name rings a bell. But networking is about long-term relationships. And it's all about your reputation, building a good reputation, frankly. So it's making sure that you maintain that. And it's a very wide group. Obviously business colleagues, members of groups like us now, and that's what we're trying to do, is build a network, and it includes friends and family. And moving on to the importance, there's some very obvious reasons, absolutely. New job opportunities. I know a number of you are looking for the next opportunity. You're looking for a career, not a job out there, and hopefully ones you really like. We all know that lots of jobs are filled through networking. The latest stat I found was 85% of jobs are filled through networking. So that's incredibly high. So that's why we all think if you apply for a job and you then get rejected, it's probably not surprising. Obviously, your career development, advice and guidance, people can help you with that. I think there's that old adage, if you talk to somebody, they should give you 3 more contacts that you can go to, and eventually something comes out of that. And then you deepen your business connections, because that gives you more knowledge, wider opportunities for your business growth, whether that's your own business or somebody else's you work for. But less obviously, you'll find answers to questions. Somebody out there knows the answer. It's a bit like going on to Google or onto Wikipedia. If you go out to a network, somebody somewhere does. And I have a number of networks I'm on. One is with a fellow Ned one, and you can ask them, what are you doing about this? Again, anything that's confidential you can't, but there's usually somebody who's got the answer. You get new ideas, you listen and you learn, and then in turn you'll have the new ideas. You'll get inspired by other people, by feeling alive. There's like great conversations you have with people when you just think, this is so good, I'm really enjoying this conversation. We've talked about developing long-lasting relationships. That's always important. You do get different points of view. We all think that, well, this is what I believe, and then you listen to somebody else and you think, Actually, that's a really good point. So that will help through networking. And then really importantly, it does increase your confidence just because of your practicing at meeting new people, but also because you have increased knowledge. And the more experienced you are, I think the more confident you feel. We watch some of the youngsters. I watch my niece who's 21 now, just graduated, and they all seem to have so much confidence, but you know that deep down, a lot of that comes with knowledge and further experience. Slightly controversial. I do hate talking about women. I have to say this isn't something that I'm particularly keen on talking about. And one of my reservations for coming onto this group was I don't like discrimination of any form. I know we don't. Nobody does. And I find it quite difficult. If somebody says to me, well, they're looking for a woman for this job, I said, well, they're looking for the wrong person. I said they should be looking for the best person. However, I will say here that networking, generally speaking, we're not as good at it as women as men are. Men are much, much better. That's because we don't see the value in it generally. We just think, oh, it's a waste of time. We see it as being creepy, too obvious what we're doing. Why are you talking to me? You're doing it to get something out of it. But also, men generally talk to men and women generally talk to women. You go to any event and you will see that. And it is really hard to infiltrate. And I have spent, I'm a lot older than most of you, I expect. And I've spent a lot of my early days standing behind a whole sea of dark suits trying to get into a circle. And when you're only 5'3½", the half is very important, it's quite difficult to do that. And so it's trying to break down those barriers and it's trying to work through that. So bearing in mind we're not, that's something we need to work at and see how we can improve it. So I'm just checking the time. Great, good. So on to the nitty gritty here, and this is the really important part. Actually, before I go on to that, there are my busy stereotyping on women. Just come off mute, some of you. Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm talking a load of rubbish on that one?
I completely agree. And I actually used to have a male mentor in my previous company. And he said to me at one time, he was talking about networking and was saying how important it is, and said you need to do targeted networking. And you need to identify who's the key people in this company that's going to progress your career. And I want to go through all of the leadership and no, they're not important. They're not important. Oh, actually, it's just you and this other person. But that's the way they see things, which is I'm not going to network unless that person can progress my career.
Wow.
And that was very much absolute direction. Don't bother with anyone else. That's what you're doing it for. And I thought that's a bit cold, I think, for females. I prefer to think that there are other benefits apart from just advancing my career.
I would agree with that. I think that there are other benefits. I had two experiences. One, when I was very young, I went out to work as a Pontins Bluecoat, and my parents thought it was a dreadful thing to do, and they were desperately trying to get me back at home to have a proper job in an office. But my job in the evening was just to walk round and talk to people who were on holiday, and they were there just to enjoy themselves. And at 17, that was a really difficult thing to do, just to walk up to complete strangers and say, how are you? And just get into conversation with them. But I did it for 3 years. And having done that, I would say that was one of the most important things for setting me up as a life skill to be able to make conversation with people. And then the second thing, Beverly, that you said about just finding the people who you already know are the ones you ought to look for. An old boss of mine many, many years ago said to me, when I was quite young, he said, well, if somebody asks you out for a date and you don't think he's necessarily going to be the one, still go out with him, because he will have friends and he will have other family members. And you might find that by having a date with him, you may then go on to meet other people that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to otherwise.
That's so clever, isn't it? Yes. I think what you're both saying there is it makes me think good, because that's what I felt, but I've never had it confirmed so strongly before. So thank you. Anybody else want to chip in, or should we move on? Okay, so let's move on to what I would call the nitty gritty on the slide here. Loads of hints to go through. One of the things I would very much say is planning beforehand. So this is what I said to you. Had you planned for this seminar? How much work had you done beforehand? I know it takes time to do that, but what do you know about each other as well? A question there. So it's all about getting ready. So if you are going to anything, it's much harder at the moment, of course. It's only because I suppose it's not hard, it's more, it's just new world at the moment to us all. So it's thinking about through. So some of my examples will be you go into a room. Well, never mind, but we can adapt that thought there. So it's when it's those chatty moments, and that's when the networking part comes out more than at any other time. So beforehand, think about what you're hoping to achieve by attending this seminar. What are your challenges? If you look at Google, they've got some great examples for how you start a conversation. So I think that was Emma, you were talking about your experience, wasn't it, as a red coat? It is having those one-liners. It's not the to start with. Always remember you have just one opportunity to make a first impression. So it's having that first sentence crystal clear. So, you know, hi, I'm Jane from Mexico. Sometimes you go, and then you've lost the moment. Some people are very good. Some people I work with are very good at the pregnant pause. They go, and the whole room stops and listens to them. I personally have never managed to get that gasp of people listening. So I always have my first sentence really clearly there. And things like, how have you found today's seminars talk? Is it relevant to what your challenges you have at the moment, or something like that? So one thing to be really ready for is exchanging contact details quickly. It used to be flicking business cards straight across. That was very, very easy to do. But of course, it's slightly more difficult now, but you can make sure you've got the details, have your phone handy, make sure you're jotting those down. Do your homework. LinkedIn, thanks very much. I've got great details on those of you. Really good for some of the details there. Obviously, be careful or know what it says about you on LinkedIn. I did a quick check on me. I think, oh, that's interesting. I haven't checked my details, but have a look at those. Always target yourself. So when you're going to something, it is work. So make sure you know who you want to talk to, and how many useful contacts you want to come out of it. It might just be one, it might be two, it might be 10. It depends on what you're going for. If you're going to an exhibition, of course, that's a big commitment. There's a lot of things going on. So you need to plan who you need to see, why, and what you expect to be a good outset, an outcome of the whole day. So it sounds as if I go in very much with a clear head, what I wanted to see, who's there, etc. And that's very true. I do. I go to something knowing why I'm going, why I'm investing an hour a day, 2 days of my time, and then who I want to see, and ticking them off, frankly, as it goes along. However, you have to be flexible because life is surprising. It is a conversation to be enjoyed. So if you do get onto something else, that's really important. One of the things we found during lockdown, I worked with a fantastic team, a fantastic board for a fantastic company, and there are 5 of us who are non-exec directors, which is a privilege. And one of us was saying recently, what we really miss is those chats around, oh, how the kids do, did they graduate okay, what's happening with this? Because we do normally get time overnight or in between the various meetings. So we've had a conversation one evening, we had drinks around the screen, just to make sure that was happening. So personal things are important. It is important to know something about somebody and remember it. I don't know how you feel, but somebody comes up to me and sort of says, oh, hi, Jane, how's the flying going? Or how's that? You're thinking, crumbs, I can't even remember who you are. So it's being ready for those conversations. Kevin will be brilliant at this because that's your whole job, Kevin, is knowing people and knowing things about them. But for the rest of us who aren't in recruitment or in regular face-to-face, it's quite hard to remember to do these things properly. Are we okay? Anybody got any questions so far before I keep rabbiting on at speed? No? Okay.
No.
Okay, thanks, guys. Because I can't see anything at the moment, which is quite strange, so could be talking to anybody. Mingle, that's the next one. Don't wait to be approached. And that was the point that I think Emma was making earlier. It's so difficult, isn't it? We've all walked into those rooms or the calls or anything, and you're thinking, what do I say? How do I go about this? What should I be doing? Where should I get to? But it's taking that deep breath and walking tall. Don't wait to be approached. If you are, great. That's really good. One of the hints when I was doing some research, and it says talk to people on their own. Yes, I would say with caveats on that. fine, start a conversation. It's always easy because they can't block you out. They've got no choice. But actually, they're probably not the best people in the room because they should be out there mingling too. So it's probably worth a couple of minutes. But then you might have got somebody that you can move along with. One thing it hasn't got on here, but I picked up from somebody else, and I think this is a brilliant hint. If it's a breakfast meeting, oh joy, do we remember those days when we used to go to breakfast meetings or whatever? She said to me, I have always had breakfast first because I don't want to be stuffing my mouth or hungry looking for food when I should be round there talking to people and mingling. And I thought that's a really great hint, because I always think, oh good, that saved me getting breakfast, blah blah blah. Oh look, they've got really nice stuff. But then you end up with two things in different hands, and it's hard to talk to anybody. So I thought that was well worth passing on. So making sure that actually you're there to talk to people, to mingle, to make contacts. I would also extend that to dinner. I mean, not having dinner beforehand, that would be silly, wouldn't it? But making sure that you are aware of using the best time, and the all-important one of alcohol. I was thinking, we all know that just because it's free, it doesn't affect us any differently. And we have all seen, probably people in our own teams incredibly embarrassingly doing something, wasting an opportunity. So that's one I think we all know to be really, really careful on. That obviously applies to Zoom as well. Have you seen anybody eating in front of the camera? Oh my God, doesn't it look awful? So if you are eating, switch the video off. It's really straightforward. People now don't seem to realise that you do need to nip out of the room to use the facilities or have something to eat or whatever. Having a drink, that's fine. But I was watching somebody recently having their lunch, and I thought, that looks terrible. Switch your video off. So, and again, check your background. I was joking about the pictures falling off the wall. Do be conscious of what's behind you, because otherwise it can be too distracting for people looking at what's behind you rather than paying attention to you and what you're saying. So moving on to conversations, back on the slide here. Keep conversations brief if they're not fruitful. We've all been there, and you get stuck with somebody. You just think, oh, I'm not getting through my list of people. I need to get around. They're obviously having more fun over there. I want to be there. So have some way of saying that. My one is usually something along the lines of, oh, it's been great talking to you, but I think we should both mingle some more. Thanks for an interesting discussion. Best of luck with. And then try and remember something about whether it's a project they're working on, or whether it's a technology thing, or a new job they've got. Even the dreaded thing about the football season, good luck with whoever it might happen to be. And that which leads nicely into the next point I come up with there is make sure you're up to speed with today's news. There's no excuses now. It's always available for us, just a couple of things, or news about such and such, business news specifically, of course. And girls, don't we have to know about sport? Oh my God. So I'm sure you've all got either a wonderful neighbour or partner or somebody which saves you doing absolutely everything. I used to work in the pub trade, I've said, I've worked in the pizza trade, less so. I know it's probably even fair in the banking side as well, but it's the Monday morning conversation. So I have a lovely neighbour who I used to bring up on a Sunday night, who would give me all the key things from the weekend. So key bits, one or two key, he was robbed, that was a bad goal, bad ref decision, something like that. So I'd have everything ready to talk about and add to the conversation on the Monday without watching a single bit of sport, because I personally prefer to play sport rather than watch it. But that's me. Maybe you're all interested in football, rugby, cricket. Brilliant. If you are, great. You probably don't need to know that, but it is useful to find a willing person nearby who will give you the rundown. Next one is something I'm not doing at all at the moment, which is listening. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You know all about you. So you don't need to share that with somebody unless it's going to be of benefit to you. If they need to get to know something, and think about what it is that you want them to know about you. If it's a particular project you've done, or a particular company you've worked for, or a particular skill that you've got, or something, just try and then in your head tick off thinking, what will they be thinking me? Will they be thinking I'm a good strategist? I've got fun to work with, or what key messages am I putting across? But then listen to them, because you'll pick up hints from them. And people generally like to talk far more about themselves than to listen to you, don't they? One of the things that you can also do is by helping other people. So in actual fact, you might be talking to somebody who you think, oh, I've just been talking to somebody else, and you two should talk to each other. Now, that doesn't include you. It's of no benefit to you whatsoever, but that's all about networking. So you pass other people on. So it's the dating one that was Emma or Bev was talking about earlier. So go out with somebody because they might know other people. Well, it's the same thing. You link people up in that way through. And then one of the most important things is the follow-up side. So there you've gone, well organised to whatever it happens to be, whether it's an online call or it's a seminar, conference, exhibition, work type event, whatever, and you've gone with your list of people and you've gone underlining, working through, and then you've exchanged details, and then you get back and life descends on you and you do absolutely nothing about it. We all do it. So I'm as bad as anybody else. So I would always take advantage. If it was a seminar, conference, or if it was overnight, I would do the last night to make sure I did that before went down for dinner. If it's an event in the evening, I was coming back by train from London, would spend the train journey rather than nodding off, would make sure that I followed up, made notes who I wanted to, quite ruthlessly, frankly, with people, because we are all very, very short of time, but making sure that you've got the key ones, and then following up quick, whatever method works for you, whether it's a LinkedIn invitation or whether it's a quick WhatsApp or something. So, oh, great to meet you, we should get together, etc. So that's the first part of the hints on that side.
One note from me on that, Jane. You mentioned the LinkedIn invitation. I find that covers off a lot of those points you just mentioned there. I think for me, yeah, one of the worst things for me is remembering the people you've met and following up with them. So in the absence of business cards nowadays, what I do is at the end of that first conversation with that person, I'd use my LinkedIn app as the business card. So I'd send them the invite there, and then I'd put in the message, nice to meet you at the so-and-so event, good luck with whatever, the thing that's going to remind you of why you're going to follow up later on. And then when they come to accept it, you've got that instant reminder then of what you spoke about.
That's a great hint, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else, Kevin?
So I was going to say, I also had a friend who used to actually have a spreadsheet, slightly anal probably, but every single time they met someone, they'd actually document where they met them, what it was about them, and then an interesting fact. And then to your point, then next time they go back to them, they can say, oh, and by the way, you know, your cat was pregnant. Did they have the, whatever it is, but it's there all the way through, and they, you know, just keep it all in the spreadsheet so they have that to refer back to, which I thought was a good tool.
Right, well, thanks, Bev. Anybody else? Do share, because that's the way networking works. No, that's the way we all learn. Okay. So going on to the follow-up side, then keeping your network alive. So we've all made all of these great contacts, but do regularly check in with them. I'm the worst on this one. Only check with people when you need them. So the job falls apart, or you decide you want to move on, or life changes, or whatever. And then we're all brilliant at networking. Oh, I haven't spoken to you for 5 years. Hi, do you remember me? Give us a job. You know, that's sort of what are the contact side? How does that work? That's not the way it is. It is keeping up regularly with people. Just saying, just checking in with you. It takes time, of course, so make sure it's only with people who have a particular interest. It is hard to do that without doing the whole blitz of everything out there, but do make sure you do keep up to date regularly with people. I remember one of the headhunters saying to me once, "You're just a nightmare, Jane. You only contact us whenever you want something." I was like, "Well, doesn't everybody? You know, normally I do a Christmas card. What more do you want?" But she said, "Look, when you're in town, let's go for coffee, go for lunch." I would never have dreamt of inviting a headhunter out for lunch, but apparently that's what you do if you're good at networking. I mean, Kevin, it'd be interesting for you to comment on that. Or was this just somebody who enjoyed going out for lunch, or was that really a key part of what we should all be doing?
I think my view on that is that there are a list of candidates I'm aware of that I only hear from when they want something, and that probably leaves a negative impression. So as much as if I had something for them and they haven't been in touch, I probably will still get in touch. But yeah, there are those that you try and talk to when they're in a post and you get nothing back, and then as soon as they want you, they message you. So I think, I'm sure in other walks of life, that's recognisable as well. So I think, keeping in touch with people even when there's nothing for you to gain from that interaction is definitely important. You never know when you're going to need that contact.
Thank you. That's really helpful, I think. Yes. Yeah. It is not many people are good at following up, as Kevin said there, so keep in touch. So we've touched on this already. Other things, looking to extend your network through your network. At least one contact should make at least one more contact. I think you should really make 3. So be conscious of how your network is. Big social media, fantastic, absolutely great. But do use it wisely. My advice is only communicate when you've got something helpful and interesting to say, and ensure it's business related. It drives me nuts the amount of rubbish that's on LinkedIn at the moment with people. I don't care about what's going on in your social life and your personal life and what the cat's got and everything else. It's fine on Facebook, but on LinkedIn, that's not what it's for. If it's a personal part, you don't, the cat's been ill, that's fine, but don't put it out there for the whole world to see. And that's my strong advice on that one. Facebook, fine. I'd also say be very careful what's out there, because I'm sure you all do the same as I do. You're interviewing somebody, and what's the first thing you do is go out there and see what's available on them. And so pictures of them on Facebook may or may not be a good idea, and it shouldn't influence you, but of course it does, because we're all human. The bottom one, I've only ever seen somebody do this one, and it's absolutely brilliant. Obviously not that hard at the moment, and it's hard to imagine. But he, of course, it would be he, because very good at networking, used to rent a room in a pub in London once just before Christmas, sometime in December, on a midweek night, and it was near a tube station, and just invite virtually everybody on his networking side. Made it sound very personal. Oh, hi Jane, it'd be really good to see you. Haven't seen you since blah blah blah, or whatever. Probably took a lot of time to do it. And then we'd all just turn up, and you'd buy your own drinks. The pub were very happy to have the room for free. It's one night in the whole year, but what a really great idea. Now, I can't imagine when's that going to be. Certainly not this Christmas, maybe next Christmas. And it would be a bit contrived to do it, contrived to do that on Zoom or Teams or whatever. But think about the concept. It doesn't cost you anything at the end of the day, and people are really keen to do it. So I was very impressed by that. That does keep your network alive, as opposed to, as Kevin said, when you want something from people from there. So that was all I was going to share. What I'm hoping to do now is open it up to more of a general discussion. I've jotted down sort of 4 or 5 questions and comments. So kicking out. So first of all, question to everybody. If you've got a good networking experience, you can share what happened and what don't, or likewise, if you've got a bad one, feel free to do that as well if you're brave enough.
I've got a really good one to share, actually, and thank you for the question. So I'm pretty new to all this stuff about networking, and you're quite right. Earlier in your presentation, you'd said sometimes it can come across as creepy, and I remember in a couple of the first leadership roles I'd had, people actively tried to network with me, and it came across really wanting to get things from me. So the good experience I've had is that in my previous workplace, I was introduced to a proper networking club called the Chemistry Club, which if you've never networked before, you join and you get given a whole list of people that will be at the event, and you can look them up and decide which ones you want to talk to. And when you get to the venue, which is usually in St James's in London every month, you have your own allocated introducer who's got a list of people that want to meet you, and they've got the list of people that you want to meet, and they stage manage the whole thing. So they come and rescue you 15 minutes in, and there is free drinks. I don't drink, I don't believe in alcohol, so basically I just stick to water, and I have a laugh at everybody else getting drunk. And then at the end of the evening, there's a dinner where you can sit, and I tend to sit, dessert and main course separately. Really, really nice, not intimidating. And it's taught me a lot about the process of networking, because I'm from a very working class background where, quite frankly, you don't do it. You don't do it. You just reach out to somebody when you need something. And I've had to learn it from scratch. It still feels a bit weird, but everybody's doing it now. So I think the Chemistry Club has been a brilliant place for me to learn the skills, if you like.
Yeah, I'd endorse that. I used to go to the Chemistry Club. In fact, I probably stopped getting invited when I stopped working full time, I expect, but they were fantastic, Aina. I found they were, yes, exactly as you described there. Once you get over the deep gulp that you take at the door as you walk in. Anybody else? Good one, bad one?
We used to have a really good one at my previous company, Speed Networking. And it was a really good way for you to get to know people on your campus. And, you know, in the sort of normal days when everyone's going into the office, I do find that you can get very siloed within a group of people that you work with. And people don't tend to look out. They don't look out to the other people in the teams and look to see what they can learn. So we used to do speed networking, and what we used to do was organize with another team, and it would be a maximum of about 15 people. And what you'll do is you'll go in with, say, facts about yourself, and then each person, you stand in a ring with a ring outside, and then you face one-to-one, and you have, say, 2 minutes per person to say something about you, both personal and work-wise, and then you swap. And the ring just goes round as you gradually get to know people. And again, because it's quick and people have already thought about what it is they want to say or learn beforehand, people are prepared. And that works really nicely.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm currently part of I've joined a speed networking group online, and it's got a nice buzz about it. And because it's speed, I feel that it does help you if you're not very confident with networking, because you have 4 minutes at a time, and that time, the break in between you get back into the main room. There's a lot of laughter. The way it is, it's a real kind of jovial, happy place to be, and then you sort of go off into a breakout room to be with somebody else and to talk about, to listen to them about what they do. You tell them what you do. And if you want to have a one-to-one afterwards, then you agree that amongst yourself. So I've been doing that now for about 3 months, once a week. So yeah, I've met with 1 or 2 people, but it is what it is. It's speed networking, but it's got a real nice sort of buzz to it, so it's not so kind of formal.
I agree with that somewhat, because I think it's practice. I think that's the biggest thing for me is I'm an introvert and I hate anything networking. I really don't enjoy it. So knowing what you're going to say beforehand, what you want out of it, and then the practice and putting yourself in that position where you need to keep doing it actually just makes it easier and easier each time.
Yeah, it's called Peppercorn. So if you're interested, I could give you the link.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a question for the group. Prompted by what Beverly's admission of being a non-drinker. Personally, I'm not a non-drinker.
Not me.
Oh, somebody else. Sorry.
I'm a drinker. I apologise. That's Gaynor.
Okay,
That's me, geeky.
Beverly likes to drink. Somebody else doesn't. Personally, I'm kind of from a background of drink to get drunk. I'm not a very social drinker, and obviously there's a lot of people. Especially from different demographics that don't drink for cultural reasons. In the UK, we've got kind of a culture of networking through alcohol. You mentioned renting a room in a pub, Jane. Has anybody got any ideas of ways to, force networking and facilitate networking that doesn't revolve around alcohol?
Oh, cake. That's a great favourite with me. Afternoon tea networking cake party, perhaps.
Yeah, I've certainly done that with a group that I'm a member of, and in other times then we've tended to meet up and do all sorts of different types of activities. But one of the first things that we did when we went into lockdown was to have an afternoon tea networking event, and we actually had a speaker from a company in Essex that specialise in putting on tea parties, and they have a speaker who talks about their sort of expert on the history of different types of teas, and so there was a quite an interesting talk about tea. But then the rest of the event was really to enable people to be able to network, and so we were all together, and then we broke out into separate rooms, and then came back again afterwards, and then split out into other rooms. So yes, no alcohol involved, just tea.
Cool. Fantastic. That's great. And so moving on, there's some really, really good examples there. How much time does everybody put into networking?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think I put as much time in as I should, and I think it's finding out you've got to try them out, and obviously I've stuck with this speed networking because I like it, and I find that it's helping me, and it's easy in the sense that I'm getting the opportunity to actually talk about myself and meet the same people and hear them talk about their business. And thanks, is it Kimberly? What's your first name?
Jane.
Jane, yeah. I mean, you're giving me some questions that I can sort of ask to push those conversations forward a bit, because I might have met them once or twice already on the speed networking. But I think because, you know, working from home, I have lunch break, I could do it more often, and I'd like to be able to do it more, but it's finding, you know, the right time.
Yeah. It's hard work. I mean, and I haven't got the answers. I mean, it's something that even thinking about it now, I'm thinking, gosh, I should do much more on it. But you know, you don't. There's always much more exciting things to do, really, isn't there?
I do find.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've also recently joined an organisation which was via LinkedIn. Somebody made a comment on LinkedIn. I thought that sounds interesting. It's called Squeeze. It's spelled SWQZ. I think it's ZZ. Not sure. It's an unusual spelling, but anyway, they have a Friday morning coffee morning Zoom meeting. Starts at 8:30. It does actually go on until 9:30, but I tend to leave at 9 because I'm starting work. Now, it started, as far as I was aware, fairly recently as a networking group, but we've now started to move on from that, as well as just having general conversations about business opportunities, and it goes into other things about how we've been dealing with COVID and lockdown. But we've now also started to build a way of being able to advertise our services. These are all people who are in some way transformation experts, and we are starting to market ourselves out and to enable us to be able to find work. Either as a whole, because we have different people to be able with different skills to be able to call on, or to be able to show that we have a bank of experts that could be of use. So not only is it networking within our group, but we're also now getting together to be able to form something that we can present out to the outside world, and perhaps to create some business for us as well.
That sounds interesting. I'd like to have a bit more information about that.
I'll find the link.
Excellent. Thanks. Anybody who's not spoken yet? There's a lot of people on the call. Rupert's probably on the gym, but anybody else who's not in the gym or not eating? No? Okay. So
I'm currently Sorry, hi everybody. I'm currently working out, but I'm trying to make sure my network's not getting fuzzy. But there was actually something I wanted to share, but I was trying to talk before, but my network was really bad. So hi everybody, I'm Rupert. I guess kind of talking about the finding time to network, etc. You spoke about how much time you should kind of put in. I'm quite new to the business world, so I've just kind of really started a kind of corporate job for the last couple of years, and I think in terms of my time span and being, well, not really young, but kind of being fairly young, and I've got a baby face. So I often find when you do try to network, because I work for a kind of a startup company, and when we do kind of go to say if you're familiar with Gartner events, or you've got these networking events for one of our partners like EY, etc. often I find like a lot of people wouldn't really talk to me because they probably think that I'm a little kid. I don't know if that's anybody else's kind of, if they've ever faced anything like that. They just don't take you seriously because you'll be talking about something, because I work in tech. So I'll be talking about kind of my inspirations and stuff, and they'll be like, okay. So I don't know if anybody else has faced anything like that.
Not for a long time, I have to say, but I very much can relate to that sort of a long time ago with really, really hard work. So, but
Can't
anyway,
hear you very well. Sorry, Rupa.
so do you, what Rupa was saying there, I'll just repeat. Can you hear me okay if I repeat it?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. She was saying that she has a very young looking face, just starting out there now with a startup company, and finding it hard because people don't take her seriously if she goes to a Gartner event or any event, because she looks so young and people thinking, why should I speak to you? And it'd be great to hear from some of you who are around that sort of young age and starting out, and give some up-to-date hints, because anything I have was a long time ago. I can relate to it, but I've moved on since then.
So my name's Sue Hyde. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Sue.
Yeah. So I've been going, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And just switching off everything and doing everything. So I sort of can, but as Kevin knows, I'm at the other end now. I've done 48 years in IT. It was never going to last, Rupa. I was a 16-year-old, came straight out of school, working in the Bank of England, no less. So networking in those days was something the men did, not the women. And I've got a 25-year-old daughter, and I've told her to now stand up for herself. And she has. And because she has, and she goes to these networking events, and she listens, and just listen. Listening is a big skill. And not a lot of young people do it, I know for a fact, for my 25-year-old daughter. But the one thing she did listen to is when I said to her to network in the bank that she's in now, and to listen, just sit and listen. And she has, and she's just recently got a very, very good promotion, having only been there 4 years ago. So don't be afraid of being young, like I was 48 years ago when you were spoken to. But have something that interests. Listen to what's going on. Listen to what's being said, and then find a way of getting into that conversation. And then they suddenly listen. So that would be my advice. Just find something that's going on. It might be that they play tennis and you do, and then bring that up, and then it'll prove to them that you've listened. Because, like I say, us oldies don't think you youngsters listen. You need to be told rather than asked. But just listen would be, and then pick up on one topic, and then bring that back into your conversation with that person to prove that you've listened. Does that make sense, Rupert?
She's on mute, Sue, actually.
Okay, but that would be my advice as someone that is just literally recently semi-retired.
I think that's sound advice.
Yeah, I think it's like anything, you've got to find that common ground, haven't you?
Absolutely.
So they might be looking at it as a generational gap, but then as soon as you can find that common interest, like Jane said, Jane brushes up on her sports knowledge just so that she can drop that into conversation, even though it's not her personal interest.
Yeah, and suddenly you'll find, because you've made that connection by listening, then suddenly it'll burst out onto something else.
Yeah, it's hard. Anybody else got any hints? I think we've all remember being there. Yes, it is. It's certainly. I think it's very, very difficult, Rupert. You do have to try and break in, be brave. But I think listening is a really good key on that, and finding some common ground. Okay.
I've got a question. Do you think that there might be a time where you are, because it's all about cultural group dynamics, isn't it, really? And do you think that you might come up to a point where you find that you're part of a group, but you don't really feel comfortable in the group, for a number of reasons? You might have tried, and you just kind of feel, well, the group is not really where you should be.
Great question, Lorraine.
Have you had anyone had that experience?
Oh yeah, I've come across so many boring people who never ask you anything, and I thought, oh, I could strangle you, and then I politely said, I have actually politely said, it's been great to chat to you, but I think I'm going to mingle a bit more now. Ta-da! Just follow your gut, you know, follow your gut.
I'm so glad you said that.
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I've been in some events where people are so up their own shirt. It's incredible. And you just have to smile and walk by. Sorry, I'm being a bit cheeky.
I think the best one I ever did on that, again, at the Bank of England, I was doing some work for the governor at the time, the governor of the Bank of England, Eddie George, and I was on shift work, and he came to see us. He was such a lovely, lovely man. And I went, this was years ago, and I went to this thing and they were talking to me like I was some junior girl. And they said, oh, have you met anybody famous lately? I said, yeah, I had tea with Eddie George yesterday. It dropped the conversation dead. Because I was just this little 20-odd-year-old. And they said, how did you manage that? I said, well, he invited me up to his quarters. I was on shift and he saw me and I'd helped him out before and he asked me out to his quarters. Honestly, I got so many invitations after that. It was unbelievable. But that was just doing my job. So name dropping can be a handy way of getting out of it too.
Or just moving on. Well done.
Absolutely. I did. I just moved on because I was like, oh, I had tea with him. What was the big deal?
Yeah.
Coming back to that point about having an exit strategy though, and not being afraid to say, I'm going to move on and thanks for your time. It doesn't have to be perceived by them as a negative either, because coming back to Jane's point, you might be so engrossed in that conversation that it's detracting from you networking with everybody else. So, you can make it sound as though I genuinely have had a really good talk with you, but I need to make sure I've maximised opportunity to meet other people. So don't see it as you backing out of the conversation means they're going to think, oh, well, she hates me.
I guess they might be thinking the same thing as well. They need to move on.
Yeah.
I think you can usually tell, but sometimes it's really good. Then it's worth following up and saying, look, I could talk for you for hours. Let's have a coffee sometime, or let's do something else. So that'd be really good. I think back to your point, Lorraine, I've been there with it's really interesting, different companies you work for. A bit like Sue, I've worked for some big companies, but when you work for smaller companies with less budget, and then you can get into the big world, and people are just very much, what are you worth to me? So if you work for somebody I'm not interested in, I don't understand. And I think it's being comfortable just to move on and find the right network that's going to, where you are going to be valued and feel part of that. I think as women, frankly, we've all felt that a bit. But then sometimes I also think, though, this is work. It doesn't really matter. These aren't necessarily my friends. So my friends are people I have to feel really comfortable with, who I can be myself. But sometimes it's just, it's swallowing hard, but it's not easy.
No.
Okay.
Hiya, this is Silky here. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, Silky, thanks.
Hi. So Kev pinged me, and I just joined, I think, about 10 minutes back. So I'm just trying to get the context, but just wanted to add that to Lauren's question about fitting in and the exit strategy and everything else. Sometimes if I find myself not fitting in the group, maybe the reason is that the group has a group think, or everyone is kind of in sync with each other, and they share the same thoughts and the ideology or whatever. Sometimes you come in not as a cultural fit, but as a cultural add, and that might be a point for oneself to kind of stand out. So sometimes we struggle in certain situations with if I can say self-esteem, and we kind of question, or we also have this imposter syndrome. So if one thinks oneself as you're adding something to the group rather than taking something from the group, that's kind of a positive reinforcement strategy one can use just to add.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, Silky. I've found it, I've been doing the NHS Responder, I'm sure a lot of you have as well, and you bring up a complete stranger. So there's one of these 750,000 people who volunteered. You bring up a complete stranger and chat to them for half an hour, and trying to find common ground is sometimes very difficult, particularly if you've got somebody who's interested in art, and I just cannot draw for toffee. So it is just trying to find some common ground. You keep digging. Some conversations are really easy, But like some others, you just try a different avenue. So try something, and everybody's interested in something they'll talk about, but it's often hard to find it. We've got about 3 minutes left, and one or two people having to drop out already. So I just thought I'd just ask you a final question before we go, apart from saying thank you so much for your attention, which is, what are you going to do differently having had this session? You're going to put down the phone and run and get a sandwich, but what else are you going to do differently?
Do my research.
Right. Thanks, Gaynor.
I'm gonna definitely listen more. So thank you for the advice.
That's really kind. Anybody final thoughts? A lot of you are mute. I don't know, you're trying to talk, but a lot of you are on mute.
I think it's
Okay.
always have a genuine intention. You know, as you say, it's not about what they can do for you, but sorry, is your genuine intention to learn from them or to network or to find them something as well, and having that two-way street.
That's really good advice, Sally.
Yeah, I'm going to do that as what Sally said. I'm doing my speed networking later, so I'll be focusing more on what's happening with them. Some of the questions that you've asked there, just kind of emphasize that a bit more. And yeah, just because I think I've got to now be focusing on building those relationships a lot deeper.
Jane, you've inspired me. I'm going to pick your brains. I think we need to set up a coffee morning video networking session for everyone on the mentoring program, so they can drop in and chat whenever they want to. We just need to work out when it's going to be and the format. So I'll ask your advice on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. And I owe you lunch, Kevin. We should do that. So great. Thank you ever so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Do we get the chat or anything? If any information put in the chat, like those lovely groups that were mentioned, like chemistry and squeeze. I mean, do we get any? How can we get any of that information?
I'll document that, and I'll send it out to everybody that signed up for the event.
All right, thanks.
Great.
Good point, Lorraine. Thank
great.
you.
Great.
Excellent. Lovely to meet you two all. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.